My thought is this stinks to the high heavens. I don't like it one bit. We have to be mindful and careful of the fact that we don't know all the facts. We don't know all the information. As time goes on, I suppose we'll learn more and what have you. And you certainly don't want to cast any aspersions on the alleged victim. You want to definitely be sensitive to that, because anybody that's victimized of such a thing, that's a heinous act, and the perpetrator should be dealt with in the most severe legal manner imaginable. Having said all of that, this complaint was filed December 7th, 2012. It's almost a year later. The thing that stands out in my mind are two things, Skip. Number one, he hasn't been interviewed by the police nor the prosecutors. Nobody has talked to Jameis Winston, okay? Not the police, not the prosecutors. That's point number one. Point number two, I believe reading a story yesterday where it indicated that the suspect, name listed as unknown, is described as a black male with a muscular build between 5'9" and 5'11". Jameis Winston is 6'4". I think that's a distinct and very, very conspicuous difference, okay? So we have a situation where he hasn't been identified, supposedly. You're talking about an assailant from 5'9" to 5'11". He's 6'4". On top of it all, he hasn't been interviewed by prosecutors or police officials, and they're 9-0, ranked number 2 in the nation, en route to pursuing a national championship and the Heisman Trophy. And now it comes out? It just stinks to me. It really, listen, I don't want to give the impression I was raised by 5 women. There is no excuse. I've never put my hands on a woman in my life, and I never will. And any man who does it is as weak as it comes and needs to be dealt with. But let me tell you something. Having said all of that, if you're going to put forth a story and it circulates national, and we've got Jameis Winston's name plastered now across the media and across the airways to the point where obviously we're provoked into talking about it, you got to have more than this in my estimation. So I'm incredibly disappointed. I don't know who's responsible for this, but I'm incredibly disappointed that he's been put in this kind of situation, because as far as I'm concerned, I know this is very, very unpopular to say, but let me remind folks that this is America. You are innocent until proven guilty. And I understand that's the court of law, and that doesn't always apply to the court of public opinion. But at the very least, we should have more before his name is plastered like this. And I think it's very, very unfortunate that this young dude with this Magic Johnson caliber smile and the level of production and the things that he has done, where we have raved about the model citizen, et cetera, and the way he's conducted himself and been a leader, et cetera. All of a sudden, now that the Heisman Trophy and the national championship is right at his doorstep, now this stuff comes out. I find that a tad bit odd.
So do I. I don't know Jameis Winston, but I sure do like what I see of him. Pre- and post-game interviews, charisma on the field, Magic Johnson-esque. Look, this is so difficult for us to talk about, to be definitive about it, because we don't know all the facts, very unfortunately. So to draw any conclusions here is just impossible for us at this moment. But just off what we do know, as soon as I saw this story break, I thought how terribly, terribly unfair it is to this young man. And I must admit, I'm a little uncomfortable that we are leading our show and drawing even more attention to what we believe is terribly unfair to this young man. Because remember, he came from nowhere before this season started, and he elevated himself through his sensational performance after performance after performance into the national spotlight. And now, unfortunately and unfairly to me, that same spotlight is being turned on this story with the same intensity. That's America. That's the way it works. But is it fair? Well, I can't draw a definitive conclusion because we don't know. Was he involved at all? Was he just an innocent bystander? I have no idea. I don't even know how to talk about that part of it. But we do know at least we think we know, as you point out, that about a year has passed. Nobody's talked to him? Seriously? Nobody from the police department even called him the first night to say, hey, give us your side of the story? And USA Today said the alleged offender that she described weighed 240 pounds. Well, Jameis is still a pretty skinny kid. He's listed at 228, but I don't think that fits the physical description at all. So he was just somehow involved. How? We don't know. So, to me, yeah, the question gets raised right here, right now. The suspicion gets raised. Somebody somewhere trying to taint his reputation, just as most of the polls say he's leading the Heisman race? Yeah, this is America. Is racism still alive and all too well? Yeah, it is. Is that playing here? I have no idea. But it smacks of, it suggests that something is going on that's bigger than this. And in the end, Stephen A., given the glacial speed at which this investigation has moved so far, I'm pretty sure it's going to hang over this kid's head all the way through the close of Heisman voting. So is it possible that some of those old school conservative voters will let this seep into their subconscious when they cast their vote? It's possible. Now, fortunately for him, he's up against a Johnny Manziel who has already alienated a number of voters with his off-season behavior that we have talked and talked and talked to death. So at least he's got that going for him. But still, as you said, this just stinks.